What's going on, guys? It is Madman Plant, and we are back in the studio here, the podcast studio to be exact. And right now, I'm pretty excited because you know what this weekend is? This weekend is the National Cannabis Festival in Washington, D.C. And me and my friend Yoda, who's currently driving down from Delaware right now, all the way to Virginia, we're going to be there. We're doing interviews, we're hanging out, we got press passes, and it's going to be really awesome. And this is my fourth year attending the National Cannabis Festival. Next year, I plan on speaking. This year, I didn't get in time or get in touch soon enough to get set up. However, this weekend I'm going to be out there with my camera, and I got some great questions, some really funny stuff, and some really serious stuff. So I'll have a select amount of these wonderful trays by our sponsor, Legendary Leafy, that I'll be passing out for people that play a little bit on the camera with me here as we do some interviews and some fun questions. So far, if you've been paying attention, the Grow series has been going amazing. And we are in the stage right now of going, and I think we're week 3 of flower. So we have about 5 to maybe 6 weeks left. And everything is going amazing. I went in there last night and damaged my middle finger by cutting. Don't cut unless you're looking, because when there's a lot of foliage, you wind up cutting. And I had a feeling I was going to cut my finger. I actually thought I was going to cut my finger, and I was like, wouldn't it be funny if I cut my finger? And then all of a sudden, I just remember like going down. I was like, ow, and it bled a little bit, but luckily I didn't need stitches, and I wrapped it myself, which is pretty cool. So right now, before we get started here, I have some of my own. Um, Now this is, oh my god, wow. Just forgot the name. Hold on. This is the Tropicana Cherry, and Tropicana Cherry is one of my favorite strains. So we'll be cooking on this. Oh, there goes one of my cameras. Give me 1 second here to fix that. As I always say, it's not a real podcast unless there's a technical difficulty. That marks a technical difficulty. So, anyways, without further ado, I'm going to bring my friend David Chametzky on, and we're going to talk a little bit about mental health, business, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So, let's welcome him to the stage. What
Hey,
is going on, good sir?
how's it going, man? Thank you so much for the opportunity. Really appreciate, love talking to you and kind of connecting.
Yeah, no, thank you for connecting. We met through one of our good friends, JR, through a business networking group, and we've kind of formulated a little friendship on the side here. And we had spoke like last week or the week
Yeah,
before.
yeah. Last week, and
So
we kind of fell off radars, and then it comes back, and then then today you're like, dude, I need someone to pick me up, and I'm like, here you go. That's what I
yeah, no,
do.
literally, you saved me, or else I would have had to come on and talk for an hour by myself, which I have done in the past. But you saved me.
Okay, we saved each other. It's all good.
There we go. So, what do you want to discuss tonight?
Well, I always like talking with one of the things that you and I were talking about was about mental wellness and really,
Yeah,
the deep conversations that we need to have, not only men, but in society. We need to make it more comfortable to be able to talk about those moments when we're just not feeling so great, and it's okay to acknowledge that it's okay not to feel great. And what do you do with it? Looking for those resources.
yeah, no, definitely. And that's been a hot topic of mine with other people right now because it plays a way into your life, your finances, your marriage, how you deal with your kids. And a lot of it goes unregulated, unchecked. And, a lot of us are living in such a routine where everything is just the same, everything's going at the speed of light. How do you find the time and the inner peace for yourself to be able to regulate. And one thing that I definitely do is I use cannabis. What are some of the things that you've done to regulate with?
So I learned that was the one thing that I wasn't so good about 6 years ago. I knew all the right resources. I was actually teaching a lot of the right resources, but I didn't use them myself. It's one
Mm.
of those things where I talk about the ICTA disease. I know that already. Hey Steve, what do you need to do to get better? Oh, I don't know. But I know it. I read a book one time and not applying those techniques, not taking a toke, right? I mean, really, is one of those things. If you know that that's going to take the edge off for you, then why wouldn't you use it? And
Yeah.
it all comes back to knowing your resources, and as long as you're using it safely, it's fine, man. I worked in that recovery space. That's why we had a lot of different conversations between mental wellness and recovery. I'm definitely in that. I know there's multiple, camps, and I know some people are not going to agree with you and I, but medically assisted recovery is still recovery. You got to work on it because recoveries, man, is hard. That's hard work. That's knowing your mental wellness and working on yourself. Like so you asked me the question, what do I do to take care of myself? Well, I do
Yeah.
a thing called havening, and I'll show people a little bit about it afterwards. I also go to acupuncture. Uh,
Oh, okay.
yeah, in fact, I went today. I wasn't feeling that great. I walk in. She goes, "How we doing?" I go, "Not so good." I can't tell you why. I mean, just a lot of life, but that's okay. How we learn how to balance it and making those times for ourselves, that's where the real value comes in. Not only knowing what we need, but acting on what we need. And that's the real power behind it.
Yeah, and then also realizing your craziest, wildest, darkest dream or idea is somebody else's too, and that you're not alone. You're not the only one to feel crazy at times or out of your mind or unregulated. Like it's a normal thing. Even the people that look like they have it together, there's aspects of their lives where they don't. And I think also a lot of the time too is it's almost like we're playing keep up with the Joneses. We want to be so successful and we want people to like us. And when it comes to being a business owner, that's very important. Who you like, know, and trust. And the part of being vulnerable, but also being able to wear your heart on your sleeve and being real with people around you and not getting the thing. Oh well, you're just crazy. We're all just crazy. About something, whether it's caffeine or Starbucks or Target or whatever you name it. We all have our fads, but I think that's the real thing is to create that space. And then what does that look like for the customers, for our colleagues, and then, the people that we hold dearest?
Well, for sure, and it's really one of those things is wording. I don't like to use the word crazy just because of the negative connotation that has it, right? I mean, this is great. I love when I'm watching a ball game and we're going crazy because somebody hit a home run, touchdown, 3-pointer. That's fine, right? We use that word too often, and it becomes a different definition for everybody. So there are people who are clinically crazy. They're clinically, in a position where they're not able to do it. But that's where we use those words. Even the word love. Love is a word that we use in society all the time. I love pizza. I love
Hmm.
macaroni and cheese, and I love my kids. Well, those are all different types of love, if you're asking me. But it's what we do with it and how we kind of show it. It's a big difference between love and like, and we have to remember that. Same thing when we go over that line. If we're aware of going over that line to that next level of you're not being rational, right? Because that's what they equals crazy. But it's sometimes the craziest things that you might have do are also the things that need to be done. And it's not about going over the line. It's just because somebody hasn't done it before. You thought about the guy who created, look, the Wright brothers. The Wright
Yeah, the
brothers,
airplanes.
right, were crazy, right? What do you mean you're going to fly with wood and make this machine? Nah, man, you can't do that until you did it. So there are things that we can say sound crazy. A rocket ship, you're going to be on a motor that's going to lift you up off the earth. No way, you're going to blow up. But if you learn from your mistakes, you take that as an opportunity, it's not so crazy. The idea is, so the word is out there, and let's try to define it a little bit better for each one of us.
Kind of like when we agreed that the word addict versus user,
Yeah.
it carries a whole different thing. And kind of reflecting on what you're saying, one of my guests who I had the opportunity of interviewing, his name is Josh Detente, and he was on my podcast. And going back to your comment about addiction, as somebody that used to be a user and is now living a life, full of clarity, he said, people shouldn't be judged on what they do to escape trauma or addiction. You know what I mean? If it works, it works. And if it's putting your life back together, you can regulate, you can be healthy and are productive with it. Why does like things like Suboxone or other things that people use look at, like even with cannabis, oh, that's a crutch. You can't do life without it. You have to smoke. And it's like, no, I don't have to, but I enjoy it because it does work for me.
And and what, so most people, so Zoloft, all those type, lithium back in the day, all those things were medically induced, right? So if we're talking about like Suboxone, medically induced, just something that you would use for recovery. Well, they give you, they prescribe it, right? Wellbutrin, so it's all these different drugs that's okay because a doctor prescribes it. Well, I got to tell you, the number one problem was a lot of the overdose deaths that came out, and still do, is because it's in the opioids that are in prescribed drugs. I live in Massapequa, so that used to be the number one overdose death place in America. In America, so out right here in New York, right here in a relatively white collar, blue collar area, but a affluent area, and man, so that's not who you're thinking of when you see the pictures. You're not seeing Susie Homemaker, ODing because she had a back pain and she took too many pills. Now you don't see pictures like that. You see the needles, the spoon, all that good stuff, right? All the fun stuff that looks scary because it's not us. And let's talk about the us part of that, on how we get through it, how we cope. So again, you want to use that word crazy. Well, are you crazy when you yell at your kids because you're frustrated? They did something wrong. They spilt the milk on the carpet. What they do and how they do it. There's a lot of stuff. It's not crazy. It's how your coping mechanism. I think you mentioned that earlier, is how we cope becomes really thing, and we want to point to somebody else. It's never us. My kids did this. No, it's how we reacted. And I've been one who reacted poorly at times. So I'm not about to judge. I think we all have to remember that line in the Bible, either be judge, either judge those who are willing to be judged, or are you being willing to be judged yourself? I probably messed up the quote, but I think everybody gets it.
Well, and I think so too. Is you have to look at it. Being ADHD. I've been on Wellbutrin. Right now, I'm on an SSRI on a low dose, but I feel like it's making things worse. And when I was growing up, I was on Ritalin, Concerta, Vyvanse, and yeah, it may have calmed me down, but it didn't leave much of a personality behind. And even my friends in school would say, "Hey, when you're on your meds, you're like a zombie. It's like you're here,
Yep.
but you're not really there." And it's thank you. And it's like, what do we want to do? Create walking zombies, or do we want to help people fix their mental states, which is really what's broken? It's not, everyone's like, oh, it's a chemical imbalance. That's what I heard my whole life. Oh, it's not your fault. It's just imbalance in your brain. And last time I checked, I self-regulate. Like with whatever I'm doing,
Well,
whether
that's
it's
the thing,
taking
right?
care of myself or doing other things. So chemicals or not, how does that help me understand what I'm going through and why I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing to the point that y'all think I need meds?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so one of the things that you and I talked about, and I'll share here, is
Yep,
six
go
years
for it.
ago I attempted suicide,
Yep.
and most people who attempt suicide are unsuccessful. We only hear the glory stories about the people who might have been successful. But the truth of the matter is a lot of people are not successful, and that's what we need to do, and focus on that and make it comfortable spaces like this where we talk about it. And the first thing they do is they put you in and they're like, here's some medication you have to take. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. You have to. Okay, either that or you're gonna, be in the room. You have to be under care. If you want to be outpatient, if they feel you're safe enough to be outpatient, and I was. And eventually I took myself off and they were angry, and they were, the doctors, and I go, why? And what, exactly like you said, they were talking about how it masks. Well, it'll mask, it'll get you less upset. And I go, but then I don't know what's going on. Why would I be less upset? Like when you cut yourself, you talked about it earlier. When you cut yourself last night, you didn't want to not know about it. You wanted to know
Yeah.
about it to then handle it in the right way. So, again, it's every personal decision. But for me, my personal decision was to get off medicine and find my old supports, figure out the ways to get through my pain, realize what my pain was, and why. It's really important, and that's the scary part where a lot of people don't dive into it. Is the whys? Why am I acting this way? Is there something that I could do differently? uh, that's the power of really being deep and honest with yourself. And that's why I'm here to talk about missions and things like that, because I want people to be most authentic. I mean, on my own podcast about peace, love, and bring a bat, it's all about being honest and being authentic. Be authentic today. That's the acronym for BAT, or one of them. Being your most authentic self will always get you to show up. It might not get you to win the game, but it will get you to show up. And no matter what you do, as long as you do the best that you can, man, that's awesome. No matter what tools, as long as you're doing it appropriately, taking care of yourself. And that's why, medicine, induced or medicine supported in anything. So if you need the SSRs, great, doctor. But if it's not feeling right for you, or it's making you something that you're not, then there's plenty of medicines out there to find out if that's the way, or find some healing mechanisms, which is exactly what I did. Is I decided I knew how to help people. I decided to take it to the next level, and I became my biggest client at the worst time in the world. The time that I didn't want to be by myself. What happened? We had that pandemic, and I had to be by myself. Right? It was all those laws, whatever your opinion about that is. It really goes back to that was the best thing that happened for me, because I was able to dive into Dave in ways that I didn't even know Dave needed to be dove into. You're on mute.
Told you, if there's not a technical error, you're not on an authentic.
I feel authentic. Oh, I think we lost you again. You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. I am having a doozy. I accidentally kicked myself out of the chat. No, my question was, why do you think that most people aren't successful at suicide?
You know, I guess depending. I mean, we're glad when you're not successful. So let's start off that. So for those who are thinking, contemplating it, reach out to me. Reach out to somebody who you might not even know. There are plenty of hotlines, and I'll tell you why are they not successful. Sometimes it's just luck, and I know some people who are unlucky where they were unsuccessful in suicide, but made their situation worse. I mean, my situation didn't improve immediately. Uh, in fact, it got a whole lot worse, primarily because of the suicide attempt. I had my kids. I couldn't be with my kids alone for a while. There's a lot of things, but I think there's a lot of people who just want the pain to go, to leave, and by doing that, they think suicide's the answer. And while the pain might be for them away, but it's what you leave behind. So, those of us who are suicide survivors, I would say talk about it more if you can. If you're not capable of it or you don't want to, that's fine. Everybody gets to make their choice. Because I know when I had to, I had a nickname when I was a kid called Kid Ego, and it was just big brash guy and mouthed oftentimes. But when you have to go tell your kids about a suicide attempt, I don't care who the fuck you are, you will get kicked in the teeth and you will lose your ego. And that's exactly what happened. Is when I had to tell my two girls and everybody else about what I just did. Man, that was a kick in the teeth. You can't have an ego then. So when I talk about it, I still have a little bit of kid ego in me, but most of my ego had died that day because that was who needed to be killed. Because I understood that when I operate in my ego only, it doesn't lead me to something that's going to be more successful.
I came up with a quote that I was working on with some AI help. And the quote for somebody in that position, because I almost attempted myself now. I Now the people I've interviewed have been way severe cases than you and I. But the quote that I came up with was, I didn't want to ruin my life. I just wanted to escape the pain.
Yeah,
And I feel like a lot of people feel that way. Like I wasn't trying to fuck everything up. I just was tired of feeling. And sometimes that's an honest statement.
it's a 100% honest statement, and I think that's what it is. We don't necessarily want to die, and I can't speak for everybody, but there's so many stories you hear about somebody who jumped off a bridge and then was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! I didn't mean that." But it's also we just want the pain, whatever emotional pain we're dealing with. How do we deal with it? The situation looks so dark, but there really is a light that you can make out of it. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a solvable answer immediately, and it's also going to be a deep dive into yourself as to why you felt you might the world might be better off without you. And what I'd say is, at least for me, I'm really glad I was unsuccessful. I'm really glad to talk about it with people, and all the things that I've done that people have gotten to know me about. Really, that is where my life started. My life started somehow right after the attempt.
There's a song by the band 6 a.m. The song is um, Life is Beautiful. And it says, nothing like a funeral to make you feel. Um, let's read you the lyrics real quick. And it's about the lead singer's overdose.
Mm.
And I'll read you the lyrics because it falls just in line with what you're saying here. It says, you can't quit until you try. You can't live until you die. You can't learn to tell the truth until you learn to lie. You can't breathe until you choke. You gotta laugh when you're the joke. There's nothing like a funeral to make you feel alive. And then it says, just open your eyes and see that life is beautiful. Will you swear on your life that no one will cry at my funeral? And that's pretty much the whole song. And then it just repeats, but it's nothing like a funeral to make you feel alive. And sometimes I think, in glimpses of when we realize that we're not invincible, I always think about, when people, like, for instance, we had two great guests, and they're actually on my Discord, which you're more than welcome to join my Discord too. And that's one of the cool things about this podcast. It doesn't just go on YouTube and that's it. I actually build friendships and relationships with a lot of people that are on my channel and podcast. And Henry and Tristan are both gunshot survivors who pulled a trigger with a 12 gauge shotgun, and both in the face. And both of them lived. And when they woke up, um, they both had different experiences. Tristan woke up and was like in a coma like state, like a parallel universe, and he said he was screaming, and he met this like entity. It wasn't like a god. He said it was just some type of entity. It was more of a voice. And Tristan was like, "I want out," and the voice was like, "Listen, you can do this all you want, but until it's your time, you're not going anywhere."
Yep.
And then right back in, and then Henry felt like he was being judged by a judge, a jury, a whole trial for his sins and everything. And it's just interesting because even though they have suffered severely, they're both blind, they both have ongoing surgeries and other um, mountains that they're going to have to climb, but the resilience, their mind is so powerful with positivity that they live more positively than people that are completely fine and just down on themselves, like me at times. You know what I mean? And we have a lot to learn from those people who, like yourself and me and other people who have ever thought about that, because there is a real reason of, well, what does the world lose if they lose me? You know, and at times when you're in that dark depression, in that deep stage, you're trying to count on your finger all the reasons to like think that you're great, and you're really struggling. You know.
Sure. Yeah. No. Of course. And it's you know it's not only about what you are bringing to the world. It really is like an interlocking something interlocking, whatever's interlocking. But it really goes into when you're missing that one prong. So that empty seat at a table. Think about the other people at that table, what they're going to feel. Some people take it on themselves that, what could I have done? I had a friend, the time that I disappeared to when I was attempting suicide, it was over a 36-hour period. I disappeared completely off the face, and people were looking for me. One of my friends was like, dude, I'm driving down to Philadelphia from New York, from Long Island, to find you. They told me you're in Philadelphia, which wasn't true, but those are the things that you start noticing who you impact and how you impact. There's a great story from the Five People You Meet in Heaven by Maury Album, Mitch Album, and you don't know that one person that you might have touched. There's plenty of stories that I've read about if one person says hello to me on the way to the bridge, I'm not going to do this. And all you have to do is try to show one person that you need a little help. Most people will be there for you if you really need help and you want to help yourself. And you then starts thinking about it, at least for me, hey, I'm the problem. Let me remove myself out of it. But I have to also tell you that since that day in September 2019, I've written a book. I've done some really big talks. I've sat with some really cool people who were in the same position I was and then just needed to hear that message. Everybody has a message. I believe everybody, no matter what, bless you.
Oh, thank
Um,
you. I'm coughing.
okay. Still bless you. um,
Thank you.
but it really is that message and how we talk about it. Everybody has a message. You just sometimes need to find the person to get it out for you. And you ever have that good friend? I'm sure you do, where you just talk to them. Just saying hi is almost changes your day completely. That's what you need to do is make sure part of my resources is I know those friends that I just say, hey, Orange, they know they got to call me, or whatever your safe word is and things like that. If I say, that's what, in fact, this morning, right? We had a great talk last week and you reached out and you're like, are you available? I go, are you okay? Right? That was the first thing. Are you okay? The answer is yeah. And then you sent me, I just, I'm like, all right, great. The first answer is, are you okay? If you're available, great. That's why I always say to people, I'm busy right now, but if you need, I will stop everything, other than my kids. And even then, depending on what I'm doing, right? Depending on the situation. If I'm just watching TV and doing something where I got you focus. But the answer is you need those people. When I create wellness plans for people through my coaching, I make sure that we have 2 and 3 people backups. That if Steve's not available, who else am I going to call? Sort of that old military type of thinking. If the flag falls, who's going to pick up the flag after that person and after that person? And then if after that third person you're still feeling like that flag's going to fall, that's when you definitely need to call a professional. And just because you have those thoughts doesn't mean anything bad. Most of us do. Let's be
Mhm.
honest.
Oh yeah.
Most of us would like the pain to stop. We mentioned this before. If we can make the pain stop, it all becomes better because that's why you practice the pause. Right? It's a common phrase, and so let me just teach everybody about the pause that I teach. I'm going to teach you how to touch yourself in a special way that's going to make you feel good.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Yep, I
Spoiler
promise.
alert.
Yep, yep,
Better than
nope,
your
nope.
wife. If you can touch yourself.
Yeah, no, yeah, you don't need any wipes. You don't need a sock or anything, guys. I promise. It's all good. But what it is using your hands. But you see how I'm rubbing my hands in a circular motion, a nice circular motion. That motion done for an amount of time, usually really only about 10 seconds. If you could focus yourself on that and your breathing for 10 seconds, it'll begin the process to reset yourself and calm you
That's
when you're
interesting.
feeling anxious. You could do it anywhere. Nobody's ever gonna.
It's funny you say that because I do when we're in the grocery store. I'll do this when I with me and Lacey when I get like kind of like
Yeah,
in my zone. So that's interesting. I'll have to try the
that's
open
exactly
palm.
the same thing. So what you're doing is
That's
actually
crazy.
creating delta waves from your amygdala, and because of
Interesting.
that, so the delta waves that you're creating relax you. Delta waves are also the brain waves we use when we go to sleep. So it's already using your body to take care of yourself, and that's really what I'm trying to teach everybody is being able to take care of ourselves in a healthy way, and it can go deeper. So that's where when I was working, when I was a SERPA, that certified peer recovery advocate, I was able to teach people to reset themselves, create more pauses within the system. And once you can create a pause, the magic comes in the pause. Victor, when they talk about so many different things, is when you're able to do things in that 1 second, in that pause, you can think about it differently, right? We all have that when we're having an argument, even. And you're like, if you take that 1 second, you might say something nicer, or you might come up with another zinger depending on what comes on. But it's the pause, and the power in the pause is to make sure you're able to do something differently. You're able to see another path. The more that you do that, you start building resiliency. You start building a new pathway in your brain. You start optimizing your brain for what it's for to summarize better outcomes than outcomes that you might have had before.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, no, the hand signals, I've been doing that for like years now, and
Most
it's
people do.
finally crazy to know that that's actually doing something. Like I just thought it was me just being nervous and just moving my hands together, but it's actually working with delta waves and reprogramming. That's it's very interesting. It's a it's cool because if with anatomy and pressure points and all these different things, it just feel like you could truly understand in a way, like you said, how to touch yourself. That itself is a therapy. Knowing how to self-soothe. Like if there was nobody there, what would you do? Type thing. Besides go like manic or make a really bad decision or go off the wall. Something that's so simple that just holding yourself. Rubbing your hands.
Yeah,
Doing certain things, breathing.
yeah. So besides the rubbing your hands, you can just give yourself a hug, just like this. Will also create the delta waves. You can rub your forehead, and that'll also create the same delta waves. And it really is these intentional. Take those intentional moments to breathe. Right there's the still breathing method. The 4 in, 4 out. It's that intention we take. Once we take the intention, that's what all the bad intentions, right? We don't think about. It takes a little bit more energy. I'll grant you to be calm in a situation that might not feel calm, but I'll also tell you it's so worth it when you can pause just that little bit and come out with an outcome that you might not have expected or you might not have thought you could have done before. That's what recovery is doing the things that we thought we couldn't have done, but showing our body and showing everybody else what we could do. It's self-powering. That's why I love teaching it, is because it's no matter what, how they teach these techniques is a practitioner teaching teaching an individual or working on an individual. I love teaching you how to do it and teaching others how to do it because then you're empowered for yourself. I would rather empower you. It's more important to empower you with stories, being able to talk about it, even if it's only to yourself. One of the biggest things I another resource that I use is writing and journaling. And not you don't have to show it to anybody. But what you could do is sometimes then burn it in a safe place, in a safe way, and just let it go out to the universe. You can write down all your memories, all the horrible things in any language you want. You want to curse, go for it. And it's so releasing. I had done that. I had done a TEDx talk, and they said write down everything, write down the bones, which is what I call it, and write down everything. I wrote 35 pages of pain and yuck that I was experiencing. It was, and then that day, I remember it was a Mother's Day. It was a 2020 Mother's Day, sitting out there in my backyard and sort of reading all this stuff and the pain, the crying, the emotions that I was going through. And then I put it in my fire pit, lit it up, and watched it burn. There was such a release in doing that. There's so many different ways to release. When you asked me earlier about what resources, depending on the day, I have lots of different resources. I do make sure I intent and I use that intent to move the energy in the way that we need to move the energy. But some ways listening to music helps, and then other days that same song might not resonate as quickly as anything else. So just make sure that whatever resources you do, you have more than just one go-to resource. Because sometimes it might not work for that day, depending on how you're feeling.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be different for everybody.
Sure.
So you said 5 people you meet in heaven. Who are the 5 people?
Yeah, so it's a book about Mitch Albom had wrote years ago, and I think about it, and I think about who my 5 people might be. So in that book, it was a story about a gentleman who transitioned, and then before you go to heaven, you have 5 people who help you get to that, the pearly gates or the next level, and you don't know who in your life who might be there to help you guide you. It might not always be your favorite pet. It might not always be, a favorite aunt or a mom or a dad. It might be people you walk into. And I think about that all the time. You don't know who's going to be there to welcome you, to guide you through those important moments, if that's how you believe, in that you touch their lives. Each one of those stories, it's a short book. I do recommend it. Uh, it's a short book that you don't know. One of the gentlemen in this story was just held back from walking in front of a bus, and he wanted to thank that gentleman how his life had changed. Didn't necessarily become so much better, but it was at that moment he just needed somebody to hold him back. As we talk about suicide and some of the darker parts, you don't know who, when you open a door, who needs that door just through a polite gesture, a
Yeah.
hi, how you doing, and we keep repeating over those same things. You don't know who your 5 people are going to be. You might get to meet your whole family and all the stories, the dreams that we have, but you don't know who your 5 people are. And I think about that all the time when I go help people, when I show up in somebody's life being my most authentic self. And not that I want anybody to be there before me, but you don't know who those 5 people are. You don't know when your time is going to be, and who you might want to choose to be a guide for somebody. It's not always who you want to, but how they impacted your life. If you can impact people's lives and show up in the right way, you might have a guest, but also you might have a friend here before you get to transition. You never know when a friendship could start. A friendship could start and end on the same day, but a friendship could
Uh,
start and you meet some of the best. Right? Last week, think about it. Last week, you and I just reconnected. We started building a friendship, talking about mental wellness, about using and substances and substance disease. And this today, you reached out, right? You said you reached out to 6 people. I was the guy who showed up. You don't know
you
who
the
that
guy that showed up.
right? You never know who's going to be the person who shows up for you. You sometimes might be surprised, and that's why we need to show up for ourselves first, and then
That's number one.
always be open to seeing who we can serve best and how we can show up best for others as well.
Well, and that's the thing too is um, one of my friends, ex, I guess girlfriend, it would be. She was on my show, and her name is Melissa. And she said it very simple. She was speaking about addiction, but she was like, you can't do it for your kids, you can't do it for your probational officer,
Mhm.
you got to do it for yourself. And I think for showing up for yourself, and when it comes to tackling things like your demons or the darkness that lies within, you got to show up. But it's hard and it's painful, and it's much easier to just look away because it doesn't hurt as bad. But I've learned as I've gotten older to appreciate the hurt more because I feel like it's a muscle. Just like you have to have, you should build a relationship with death. So you think about death in, like, whatever way that makes you feel better about it, knowing that it's inevitable, but knowing that, the way you see it helps you cope with it. And I think there should be different mechanisms across different spectrums of our life, but they don't teach that. It's more of a self discovery, either through mistake or just wanting better, or don't know what you don't know and you just happen to meet the right person that really turns you on to something. What do you think?
Well, 100%. Yeah, you don't know, and it really is one of the things I say. I say a lot of cliches. The monsters under the bed much aren't as scary as the monsters in our head. And it's so true. We and think about it. How many times did we have monsters under our bed in our closets at night? And then we're like, nah, that was my shirt. That was a sweatshirt. That was a whatever. And the same thing goes in our head. While we might have experienced some real monsters in our lives and the traumas we experienced, they're not there anymore. They don't have power over us. And when they do have power of us, we then have to find the right resources to remove that power. That takes it a little bit deeper on, one of those things that I was talking about when I was talking that touch yourself, right? The behavioring, the techniques, that rubbing your hands. There's a way to remove some of the triggers that you feel. Like when we get triggered, when I it used to be, if you pointed at me, I'd be like, man, I'm ready to throw fair hands. And now people point at me and joke about it after I've told them about it. But it was triggers that I had experienced in my life. People pointing at me in a less good way, and man, I would automatically put up my fight or flight response system, and it's hard. And to do that is really learning how to cope it. I mean, when you talk to a lot of people who are users who have had substance disease, including eating. Okay, let's put that into that category. So again, not looking at it in any one way, using illegal substances or legal substances. Right? We talked about pills before. Eating is one of the things. I'm guilty still. At times when I want something nice, I'll go for my ice cream. Is that a great choice? No, but is it a choice I'd rather take than using substances? Yes. Finding your right resources and how we do it, how we cope through it. It's the coping mechanism and realizing, what are we coping to do? Are we looking to get better, or are we looking to just get through that situation? And it's okay to just figure out at that moment what you need for that moment. I remember walking in, working with somebody, and they walked in and they go, "You're going to be upset with me, Dave. I just used." And I said, "I'm not upset with you." I go, "Not." He goes, "Oh, but you're going to get paid." I'm like, "No." I go, "You chose to use, right?" He agreed. And I go, "But you also chose to show up here. So you knew you wanted to heal yourself. You needed a shot before Dave. Okay, I got you. I'm all with you. But you also knew what's more important, take care of you." So it's finding those moments in our lives that we take care of ourselves. And we have to remember, I know right after my suicide attempt, one of the biggest questions that I was asked that knocked me to my ass was, do you love yourself? It froze me, and I didn't understand that that's even an option. I thought I liked myself. I never really was asked that question in a serious way. Looking myself in the mirror, and at that time, I didn't have the shine in my eyes. I had dead eyes. I had that I'm just here. I'm just existing. There's days I don't feel good, but I still have the shine in my eyes. And we need to figure out how to keep that light burning. And that's by finding resources, finding healthy resources, and thinking about it. Is that going to help you, going to move you forward? Is it going to, like as a coach, that know, like, and trust. But for ourselves, are we going to know, like, and trust ourselves? And that's the real truth to the matter, is when we know, like, and trust ourselves, everybody else around us starts changing. Everybody starts seeing us differently, right? For those on your show who were addicted, were substance users, once you change that, and once you started in recovery, which is one of the biggest things, the toughest things you'll ever have to battle, but once you've done it, people go, "Hey, I'm proud of you. I'm that." And but you have to be proud of yourself. The biggest slips usually come up is we don't know how to handle the things that might just pop up. So learning how to balance and the opportunities that might come up, and knowing that if you messed up, you can stop at any time, as long as you're still, the heart's still beating. Even your friends who had the suicide attempt with the guns, and I've spoken to, suicide survivors whose lives physically are much different because of that suicide attempt.
Yep.
And they still have to go through it every day. And some days are not going to be easy, because they look at that, at least for me, I look in the mirror, I might see this old dude, but I'm still mainly looking like what I did before. Whereas once you have a physical, change, that becomes harder, right? But it's hard to look in yourself, and it's not always easy to do it by yourself. I don't recommend to at least start the process by yourself. You need somebody who might have. That's why I like the idea of coaching, and that's why I became a peer advocate, is because you know how to guide people through something that you've been through. One of the stories I like telling is, it was a story I saw first on The West Wing, about a guy falling in a hole, and he goes, "Hey, Steve, can you help me out?" "Oh yeah, I'll throw you a prayer." Well, that might work for some people, but that generally isn't going to levitate you out of a hole. And some people might go, "All right, just give me a second, I'm going to get somebody else." And then you have somebody like you, Steve, or me. We jump in the hole, and then some of you might be thinking, now you got two people in the hole. And I'm like, no, but I know the way out. I know the way out for me. I might not know the way out for you, but because I know other resources, if I can't help you, I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to sit with you. I'm going to create that safe zone for you until we can find the right resources that work for you. And there's no judgment on what resources. So, we start slow, and you move slow. At the beginning, when you were a baby, you learned how to walk, right? All those little steps and falls led to you being able to walk without any help, being able to run, skip, and all that stuff. Same thing in life.
Russell Brand has a quote on addiction now. I'm going to try to say it verbatim, but I think I'm going to mess it up. It said, unless, I'm just going to look it up. I don't want to say it wrong because it's really profound and much better than what I can remember from.
Sure.
Oh, here it is. Okay. The mentality and behavior of drug addicts and alcoholics is wholly irrational until you understand that they are completely powerless over their addiction unless they have structured help, and they have hope.
Yeah, hope you need, right? If you have no hope, that's that's the light. You have to, sometimes our or at least the old stoves used to go out and you have to reignite the burner. That's what we need is hope. Is just the belief that something is going to be better, right? Hold on, pain ends. That's what a meeting for hope, and it does. It might not end. Sorry, today, but it does end, and it's when it ends that we can then see the light again. Think about your worst days, and it eventually stopped, and you started seeing things differently. You started seeing the light, whatever that light means for you. And that's really how you get out of recovery. That's how you get out of it, is by somebody who helps you, that you get to trust, you get to sit with, who says there's a light. Just we're sitting in the dark right now in a room, holding that space, but promise me I'm going to be here until the light comes. I don't care if it's a day, a minute, a second, an hour, and I'm going to be here for you. And that's what we should all do, and make that easier to talk about. Again, goes back to that language. If we could do that, when we do that, not if, when we do that, that's where the power is knowing I'm not letting you go. Right? It's all those things we see in movies. You know, we go, you go, I go. Right, from Backdraft. But at the end of the day, why can't we do that when there's no fire out there, when the fire is within us, and we want to go forward? We go forward together. That's how humans are wrapped. No matter what, isolation isn't good for us mentally. We need to be around more people, and the right people. And sometimes the right people are not the ones who are biologically tied to us. You have to find those people and be honest with yourself. Goes back to that authenticity I was talking about earlier. When you're honest with yourself, you find the right people.
Yeah, 100%. And I think also knowing your tribe, and not everybody you come across is going to be the person that you think they will be, or even hope they will be. You can meet somebody and then they're really good at something that you really need, to do. And you're like, man, if we could just partner up, we could run the world. But maybe they have a serious issue, or maybe they're just not into it. And another thing so too is realizing that we don't need anybody. We need ourselves. I think a lot of people are like, well, if I just had this, I would be able to start that. If I just had this, I'd be able to do this. And it's like, listen, we're in a generation where you don't need any money. You need a cell phone at best and the internet, and you can make millions of dollars if you're creative. I have done very well with my platform and sponsorship and traveling, and you've done stuff with your platform, and speaking and doing a lot of great things, and it comes from the showing up for ourselves. Nobody's just gonna, like that Mel Robbins, nobody's coming. And I
Yep.
think a lot of it is we want to be saved so bad because it sucks at certain times. And those certain times could be 6 months, they could be 5 years. You don't know exactly how it's going to go. And but you gotta have faith. There was like this joke about, there was a guy, he was flying over the ocean and his plane crashed, and he was a heavy believer in God. And he said, he's like, "Don't worry, my dear." He's talking to his wife. God will save us. And all of a sudden, and I'm probably saying the joke wrong, but I'll get to the point. And all of a sudden, a jet ski came by, and the guy said, "Do you need a ride?" And he's like, "No, my friend, God will save me." And then he went by. Have you heard this before?
I have. Yeah.
Okay, it's something like that. Anyways, and then the man dies because he didn't accept any opportunities, or just take what was in front of him. And that could be good or bad, but you gotta have faith regardless, whether you sink or swim, because the ability to go forward is truly relying on us. And that also means battling what I battle a lot, which is like I also think they're testing me for narcolepsy, but I'm just extremely fatigued all the time, and I'm just like dead to the world, and I have no creativity. And I'm just kind of like stagnant, and I'm working so hard to push past that, but it's difficult because of how I feel because I'm just tired. Now I don't know exactly why I'm tired, but it's one of those things where okay, well maybe I could go to sleep, and then like I could have just said okay, well the podcast guest couldn't make it tonight, so we'll just go ahead and cancel the whole podcast. But who's showing up for my platform? Why why should why should I just accept fate when I could be like, no, that guest can just reschedule, no problem at all. And I'll reach out to my local community, like what we were talking about, your village or your people or the resources, those friends that you have, and say, hey, I need something. You know, I could have, I reached out to 6 people, maybe none of them will respond, but it's the ability that, hey, I want to show up for me. So let me give it one more shot. Let me give it one more opportunity, and then something good might happen. And even if it didn't, I still was going to come on at least for an hour and talk to everybody because I personally, like you, love what I do and have a passion behind it. And to me, it really didn't matter if there was somebody to talk to or not. I just want to be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, you got to start with yourself. I mean, that's the real answer. Is it all starts with you? Even that opportunity to reach out for somebody else. We always think it's outside of us, that the answers are without outside of us. Well, I just showed you before how to reset yourself just by yourself. That's why I love teaching that you can self soothe. If you could find at least that pause, then you could be like, all right, who do I need? What do I need? How do I do it? Those are the powerful pieces. And it is all within you. If I still chose, I can make whatever choices I want. You can make whatever choices you want. Are they working for you? That's the big question. Because when it's not working for you, that's where people go start thinking about the negative. This isn't going to work. I've tried everything. You haven't tried everything. There's a million different people, you know, therapists. There's a million different therapists, and each one's going to teach you something differently. God, I do believe God will bring you to the right people if you're really looking for it. If you're just looking for anybody, it's like dating. If you're just looking for anybody, that's an easy thing to find. If you're looking for the right one, well, welcome. That's a little harder. And, the right one for you might not be the right one for somebody else. That's why we get to make choices. But knowing yourself the best, that's where the power goes in, is knowing what you're going to do, what your needs are. Your needs might be different than my needs, and then somebody else. That's why we all have different fingerprints. All these things are truths for ourselves. I mean, for me, when I talk about suicide, I at that time I had a rational reason. It's an irrational thought. Don't get me wrong, but that's why when I talk to people and they're like, "Well, what would you do in my position?" Well, I would just keep looking for more suggestions anyway. But I know what choice I made. In fact, when I wrote 50 letters. Think about that. I was intently doing what I did. It wasn't not thought out. It was fully thought out, which a lot of times it's not. That's why I practice the pause. I thought about it, and from all the information I was gathering, I gathered the wrong information. I wasn't speaking to the right people. I was speaking to people who, not that they intended on me to hurt myself, but who didn't really see who I was. And at that time, I believed the stories that people were telling about me, the stories they were telling to me of who I was. Now, I still don't always feel good. I'm not going to tell you, yeah, now I'm fine and I don't shake. Yeah, there's days it's rough. In fact, earlier this week, if I'm going to be honest with you, was a little rough to
Yeah.
just get up and that's it. But I knew who I was. I knew that I would get the pause, that no matter how bad I was feeling then, I was going to get through it slowly. And slowly might just be, hey, I got my head off the pillow. I did a little bit more than that, but everybody gets to define themselves differently, what success looks like that gentleman after using who walked into my space and said I used, and I go, you're a winner, and it shook him. it shook him because he didn't feel like a winner. But then when he walked out, he felt like a winner. And he's been successful at that point. That wasn't the defining moment on him deciding to just stop using. And, again, when we use about language, it's not about being clean. You're always clean. You could shower. There's a lot of people who use substances who shower every day, twice a day. It's not about being dirty or not. It's about using. It's what we use. If you're using a donut, you're using the same, just a different substance. I'm guilty of that. So I don't want to say that I've seen the light and all I do is eat, everything that's good for me. I know the risks, but I take those chances. And that's the thing, is also acknowledging, giving yourself permission to move through the feelings early in the week. I knew I had to move through it. How was I going to do it? I don't know. I wasn't thinking about hurting myself. I know that that's not an option for me, because as you were sharing your other story about your friend, I also heard a voice. I was in there and, man, I researched it. That was my background. I come from corporate America, so I researched. I was like, man, this is all right. It's high percentage of success. But during that time, I heard a voice, this Grandpa Mike, who said, it's not your time. You have to go back and tell your story. Little did I know that not only would I talk about mental wellness, about suicide survivorship, I also became an author. I'm a several-time Amazon #1 bestseller, but I wrote a lot of different books on a lot of different things, because we all have that story. I don't care who you are. I'll bet you I could find a story that comes out of your life. I don't care if you think it's only negative stuff. We get to write stories because somebody else needs to hear your story. And that's the part that I just hit a couple of months ago, when I started thinking about, that now all these books that I've published and things, and I go, maybe Grandpa Mike, and I don't have a Grandpa Mike. It wasn't. Yeah, it's not my Grandpa Mike.
Well, geez,
Grandpa
we
Ben,
were messing
Grandpa
with
Leslie.
the storyline, but
Grandpa Mike.
now, knowing that Mike doesn't exist.
Yeah, but so now I tell stories. I write stories, and people find peace in those stories. There's ways to share your story and find peace, or share a story. It doesn't have to be your story. We've all gotten our resources. We all have some creative pieces. While I can't sing very well, I know how to write. And if I put together myself with the right musician, we might be able to write the right song. We might be able to change a life. There's a million bands. Today, social media allows us to teach people who we would never be able to touch. So always remember, have that hope in you. Find the flame. If you can't, if your flame went out, find a match. Because the great thing about a match is, if I light my match and give you my match, it does not take away from my match. My fire is still strong. It just has lit your match, your candle. Have that fire and take that to the next level.
Very well. And we definitely, well, when we come back from our break, we have a 5-minute break right now. So it lets you stretch your legs, get up, get a drink, get refreshed. I do want to dive into your suicide story and ideology, because we talk a lot about that on the podcast, and I think it would be a great conversation.
Sure.
So, everybody, we will be back here in 5 minutes.
Somewhere I like to go, out walking with my shadow and my garden friend. Oh, Yahweh, I know you got me in the hand, though I am tired. But will I be okay?
What's up, guys? If you're enjoying this episode, then you're going to enjoy our gold sponsor, which is Dry Flower, the original hang harvesting system. If you've ever ruined your flower post-chop or lost your terps to a bad dry, it's time to upgrade. Dry flower makes the full plant hang drying effortless with tools like their drying arms, the rack systems, and the Cannabis Guardian nets, giving you consistent airflow, zero flat spots, and maximum preservation of your strain's full aroma and structure. Built by growers for growers, Dry Flower helps you cure like a king. Our silver sponsor, Current Culture, the gold standard in deep water culture hydroponics. These systems are designed to deliver explosive roots, growth, and nutrient uptake through consistent water circulation and oxidization. Whether you're in a 4-site system for a home setup or a 100-light commercial facility, their undercurrent system and plug-and-play designs make your grow cleaner, faster, and more productive. Precision growing starts at the roots, and that's where Current Culture shines. Legendary Leafies is on a mission to support veterans and break the stigma around cannabis. Through their unique cannabis-themed trading cards, they highlight the plant's therapeutic potential, especially though for those that are battling PTSD and anxiety. Legendary Leafies blends education with empowerment, helping veterans and others feel proud and not ashamed of their mental health journey.
When I get low, there's somewhere I like to go. Out walking with my shadow and my garden friend. Oh, Yahweh, I know you got me in the hand. Though I am tired, you help me stand. But will I be okay?
All right, we are back from the break. How's it going?
All good.
Ah,
It's all good.
what- oh, look, my wife commented and said, "Hey, everyone." Let me see. All right. So, for the break, I told you that I wanted to dive into your story.
Sure.
And first of all, we all know the true definition of with suicide, which is like taking your own life. But when you were in your time period of going through everything, what was it to you? Define like the exact like result that it was going to give you besides just not being here. What does that do for you?
Well, one of the things that I was, again, the stories that people tell us that we start to believe. One of the stories I was being told was that everything is my fault, that everything, that's happening and all the things, all the bad things that are happening are due to my reactions and things like that. Now, my reactions weren't always great. There was a point of some of that being true, that some of my reactions were not good for the larger group, but there was a lot more story that needed to be told about that. But because at that time I was a little weaker in seeing some things, I wasn't always self-aware, and I was like, okay, if somebody who I love and who's extremely important to me is telling me that I'm the reason, all right, I got to listen to that. And that came into it, and I was like, all right. And because of that, my marriage was ending, and things like that. Uh, so it was just all overwhelming. And if I'm causing problems with my own children, with my relationships, with all these things, man, I'm out. I lived a good life, and I did up until that point, and I've lived really better afterwards. But I have to say, at that time, that was my mindset. And, you really couldn't have talked me out of it. One other time I really thought about it, and I was kind of looking at a chicken way of doing it. I wanted somebody to do it for me, to, kill me.
Like,
Not even
I'm
thinking
gonna
about,
hire my own hitman.
yeah, but not even thinking about the repercussions of that. But I went to therapy after that. I worked on myself. And I never thought I'd get to that point, and then I did, because I didn't really go into that dive. I healed the big things, the 30,000-foot level things. I didn't deal with enough stuff to know who I was. Like I said, after the suicide attempt 6 years ago, I didn't even know about loving myself. I liked myself, but I thought, the definition of Dave was what he could do for others. How I could tell you, Steve, man, I love you, and all those things, and show you how much I love you. Yeah, that doesn't matter as much anymore. I still will show you how much I love you, but I can tell you why. That's why when people go, I don't know, I just love her. Well, do you love what she could do for you, or somebody could do for you, or do you love them? And if you can't tell me why, and like a kindergartner, I like the way she colors her rainbows and stuff like that. Then you need to look into it, find out why that happened. So for me, that's really what the question is. Is for me, I thought that was it, man, and that's why I wrote those 50 letters. I mean, I sat that day to make peace with myself. I got myself a bagel. I got myself a yoo-hoo, and I just sat in the sun. I was just chilling, and I started writing letters because I did want to make sure people weren't going to be sad. They'll be sad about the immediate pieces, right? We go to a funeral. Oh, I'm sad that this one passed or whatever. And sometimes we leave that sadness right there. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I made sure the last words on this earth that I said to my children, and one of my daughters I was having an argument with, and I had to drop her off at her mom's. And I said, I love you. And she didn't want to hear about it. She was angry. And one of the first things she said to me afterwards was like, you really were going to leave me after I slammed the door? I go, I told you I loved you. Did you remember that? She goes, I did. I go, but you left by saying, slam the door. I go, that was on you. That wasn't on me. I gave you love the last moments that I thought I was going to be there. And when I drove away and I started writing those 50 letters, I didn't write letters saying, well, Steve, you did this to me. You did it. Nope. I was like, I made the choices for myself. There was nothing anybody could have done to save me at that point. There was nothing anybody could have talked me out of, because in that mindset, I wasn't connected to where I was. And I didn't get reconnected till I put a noose around my neck and the noose didn't work. So that's the thing. You never know when or what is going to change your life. And you don't know what's going to shake you back. Sometimes it is that person that you reach out to. And sometimes it is that moment that you think you can't do it. That moment you're ready to jump and then you hold off. Like in Forrest Gump, if you remember, there's a scene, she's ready to jump off a terrace, and then she slips, and then she stepped off. Now it's that moment we step back and we step off. That was the point for me, I mean, I tell the story, and I've spoken about it publicly, that I'm standing there. I tied my noose. I made sure it was strong enough. Which it was. Made sure the rope wasn't going to break. I picked up a milk crate. I climbed up. I jumped off my milk crate, and I hurt my neck, but I didn't break my neck. I didn't hurt anything, and I'm just hanging there. I'm hanging there like a dick. I mean, that's really, was one of the jokes, and just hanging. And I'm like, all right, now what? And that's what I said to myself. I said, Dick, now what are you doing? And it was my choice. I could have stayed there. Eventually, I might have passed out. I might have done all those things. And that was the third time that I had tried that weekend. It was a 36-hour period that I was determined, no matter which way I failed, because I had heard that voice, but I was like, no. And in fact, because my faith is Judaism, it was also, some people might not know that when they say Happy New Year in September, it's because we start the book, and it is the book of life. The story is during the 10 days between the beginning of the New Year's, and 10 days later is when God is supposed to write the name in the book, you're the book of life. And I said, no, I'm taking the pen out of God's hand. And as we know, man, my grandfather used to tell me the story. Men make plan, God laughs. God must have been laughing at me and going, all right, dude, you're going to go try it. Go, keep going until either you're successful or you get back into reality. And for me, the reality was like hanging there at a park, doing my thing. And I'm like, all right, now what? And that shook me back into reality. Be like, all right, this isn't working. I might be good at a lot of things in life. Killing myself, not so good. And that's okay. And I'm really glad that I haven't been, because I've helped lots of people talk about it since. So when you're in that mindset, you need something to shock you back, for sure. And it depends on which spiral you choose. I could have gone for more ways to do it. I could have done a whole bunch of things. But no, I decided that was my rock bottom. It doesn't mean I didn't have bad things happen afterwards. I had some really tough years afterwards, but I'm still standing. And even like I said earlier in the week, I don't go down as deep and as dark as I used to. That's what recovery is about. Is you still might slip up, but you don't go back down to where you were, knowing that you could catch a ladder on the rung down, and it's okay to pick yourself back up.
I want to kind of rewind a little bit here. My fault, and you were talking about your marriage here. Is that gaslighting and a toxic marriage, or is that truly your fault and you're really making the situations worse?
Yeah, I think there was gaslighting, and there's some toxic relationship, toxic communication. I mean, that's why any relationship going forward for me, it has to be communication. Like, hey, I don't mind when you say, Dave, I don't like the way you're doing something. I don't like the way you dress. That's okay. That's feedback. I could choose to participate. But for me, I learned, look, if you can't tell me what's going on, then there's nothing we could do. I thought I had a really good communication. I mean, we were connecting in multiple ways. And a lot of the stuff hit me out of the blue. And I wish, that's the one thing that I wish in that relationship, is I still love her. I don't, we're not together, we're divorced and all that stuff. I still love her. She's not the mother of my children, but I still love her. I think about her all the time. I pray for her. I pray for her family. It's hard, and life's hard, man. When you love somebody and you don't get to be with them, and that's a choice that everybody gets to make. And I respect it, but I would have loved the opportunity to have some of the conversations that I was prepared then. And man, I would love to have them now, because who I am now is not who I was 6 years ago. And that's what I want everybody to remember also. If you waste a month and you're the same person who you are without any sort of growth, a month is okay. Let's take a step back a little bit. But a year, hell no. You got to improve a little bit. It doesn't matter what size, and you get to define what that growth looks like. It doesn't have to be what growth Dave did or what Steve did or Joe, Mary, any other name that you pick up. It's
Yeah.
your growth. Growth means doing something differently, thinking that you couldn't have done it before. And then when you look back, you're like, man, I did 3 things that I would never do before. I mean, again, I used to think about writing a book. I never wrote a book in my life. I now have solo books that have my name in it. I have 4 books, a bunch of other that I haven't finished yet, but they're in the editing process, a comic book, plus all these other chapter books that I've been lucky enough to compile with some other co-authors. So you never know when you find that rung or what rung it is that'll take you to that next level.
Yeah. Now, why, when you talk about love yourself, that has come up several times tonight in the theme.
Yeah.
Why is it that you built such a hard relationship with loving yourself throughout the years?
Well, if we think about it, even most of the times, if you're using, it might be because you're not loving yourself. You're not looking to take care of yourself. You're not worried. You just want your pain to leave. But to love yourself is to talk to yourself when you heal yourself. When you're saying, Dave, you fucked up. Now what? How do we move forward? Looking at yourself at what repercussions. So you're asking me, before about the divorce and the challenges in the marriage, and I told you right away, yeah, I'm guilty for a lot of the things that were said. They could have, they might have been, and I don't know. We don't get to determine how others feel our actions are. So you have to also remember that. So while my intentions might have been good, if they were not received good, it's still on me. And and sometimes it's not. And it's like, hey, you want to believe the story you want to believe, that's also on them. So that's where self-love comes into it, is when you really look at it. And for me, when I had to look at what I needed to look at and see it differently, I was like, okay, could I have done things differently? Did I really show up for the relationship? I think most of the time I did, but most of the time isn't all the time. And that's something that I could look at differently. Like I said, I would have loved her to have a little bit more communication. She didn't show up fully, and she would talk to the girlfriends, and when she would hang out with certain girlfriends, they all want to be negative, right? It's like the guys, you want to hang out? Oh, my girl does this, my girl does that. But how many times do we say, "No, my girl's wonderful. My girl does, everything right."
Lacey, you're wonderful, but you better be watching the podcast, because if I find out during the podcast that you weren't watching, you're not wonderful anymore.
Yeah, see, you already putting on rules, man. It's the rules. And but I know
I need instant gratification, okay?
Hey, I hear you, man. I'm all about instant gratification.
I thrive on that.
Yeah, but the idea is that if you could love yourself, it's okay that Lacey.
Told you.
I see she's working. All right. Yeah, she's watching. She's watching. You got a good woman there, but you already knew that.
I do. I will say that I got very lucky.
Yeah. And it's a lot of that is because it's hard work. Loving yourself is hard work. So we'll all make mistakes. I still make a ton of mistakes, and you want to beat yourself up. You want to use all the language that people used. And guess what? You still got to figure yourself how to love yourself again. And that's why when things aren't well, you got to learn how to get well. You need to use your resources to what brings you back some joy. For me, sometimes getting behind a camera, taking those pictures. I wasn't feeling that well, but Sunday afternoon, I got to hang out with my friend Stacy, who is one of my big cheerleaders. And I got to take pictures because she wants to use on her website and some stuff. And she's like, you're going to have to do some magic and this and that. But she had, she feels she's older and she doesn't look as well. And I take some pictures and I go, how do you like that? How do you like this? How do you like that? Let's do some weird shit. And we took some pictures. And that's exactly what we did. Yeah, she was like, how about this? Because once you can break down those barriers, you then show people who you are. And it's by showing people who you are that's powerful. But you need to show yourself first. Give yourself the permission to mess up and still move forward. Give yourself permission like here, I'm wearing my teal shirt. I didn't even go all teal on you, but I'm the guy who wears a teal suit. I'm the guy who comes sometimes with a bat, and people are like, oh, this and that. I do it because I give myself permission. It's not about looking at the bat or the green suit and going, what are other people going to say? It's the idea of, I don't care what they're going to say. I'm happy. That's my Superman suit. I mean, I've dated some people since, like, oh man, you're not going to wear that teal suit, that teal this, teal that. Like, you don't understand it, but that's not for me to teach you. I could explain it to you, but you might not understand it. It's understanding ourselves and being our most authentic self. That's where the love comes in. And when you could do that and also recognize when you don't do well, when you aren't that person 100% and still loving yourself through those moments, there's power there.
Yeah, I highly believe that. And that's one thing too, is also, setting yourself free. A lot of people, they want to do things, but they don't because they're afraid of rejection or what will happen or what if people don't like it. And it's really it's not for them, it's for you, and the more you can realize that, the better off you are. I want to go a little bit back to um, the setting up for suicide. Now, you studied behavioral science.
I did.
Yep. And talk to me, other than obviously you want to treat yourself good one last time, when Tristan committed suicide or tried to commit suicide on the night that he did it, he wanted to have one last beer. Henry, I forget, Henry did something. And then my friend Josh Detente, he actually got high because he's like, well, hey, I don't want to die sober. And actually got so high that he couldn't hold the gun right. And when he fired the trigger, it actually went through the back windshield, not into him. But with you, as far as writing letters and going off to a place, a lot of even my time when I was going to commit suicide, I didn't like do anything special. I was just in my little den in my parents' house. But what's the significance of even doing that? If you're going to terminate yourself, why is that important to somebody that's about to do that? Since you studied behavioral science, I figured out this would be a good question for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons. For me, I can only tell you from me for sure.
Yeah.
I want to, like I told you, I had a bagel and I had my yoo-hoo. It was something, a memory of my youth in Brooklyn, and it was something that I wanted, that I felt in control of. The writing of the letters, I felt in control of, and that I know I didn't share any of those letters after I actually had them shred, but it was the idea of, while my life was painfully for me at that time, I also wanted to take care of people. That's what I've always done. I wanted to share love with people, and even the people who had said some of those negative things towards me, I don't want them to carry the burden of, Dave did this because of them. Dave did this because of Dave, not because what Steve said or anybody else. It's because Dave chose this. This was a choice for me, which became empowering for me, truthfully. And that's why when I say my suicide story will be different than others, because I chose those things, and it's different what we think. We can't think, I'm the cause, I'm the cause. I know about that, and I did feel like I'm the cause. And then one of the things, again, when you have to tell your kids and then they go, we didn't feel any of those things that you were being told by somebody else, it wakes you up a little bit. That having those conversations, having the conversation with my friend Dan, who was going to drive 2 hours to pick me up because that's where he thought I was, and having deeper conversations with him, those are real conversations. Those are things that make me remind myself that I do matter, and all the people that I've spoken to about it since. So I did a TEDx talk, and it's maybe one of the worst, as one of the comments on my TEDx was like, this is probably the worst TEDx talk ever. It might quite be. That's great. It still is a TEDx talk. The message, I could have presented it a lot better. I'm a better speaker. Let's be really honest. But what I will tell you is it was also the first day I woke up, man. I was prepared. I got it. And then I shit the bed because I woke up and I said, there's a few people who know about my suicide attempt. And now the world can know about my suicide attempt. And it scared the shit out of me. There's the people at work, right? The people who are going to judge. And they're going to judge anyway. But I didn't think about it. And, my presentation's all right. But there's a few people. And the thing that I take a pride at is that I had some families reach out to me. And they said, can I talk to you? I'm thinking about this and things like that. And what I did is I got them a therapist. I'm not a therapist. I can guide them only so far. And I don't want to be responsible for that. I think everybody, if they need a mental health professional, there's a lot of different ways to do that. And go reach out. Don't be scared. Most of them are not as scary as you want. And if you find one who is scary, that ain't the one for you. But then going forward, knowing your resources. So for me, again, it was writing those letters, showing love. It's all energy. All I wanted was to feel love. I didn't know I didn't feel loved. And I just wanted to share back that love. So I think while everybody might be different and it might just seem like a really similar answer, it's very personal. For your friends who might have used a gun, that wasn't a way that I was going to do it. And I won't go deeper into how I did it, but I didn't want to mess. I didn't want, I wasn't looking to cause more pain for anybody who might need to do that. Again, it was a personal decision. It's what you're going through at that moment. I can't explain it, but for me, it was and for me, I was really comfortable. That's why there wasn't any point during the day that I was like, I could have stopped. I could have done anything I needed to do, but I decided at that moment, I'm good. Having my Yoo-hoo, that was good. That chocolate, if you don't know what a Yoo-hoo is, go get one, guys. You'll like it. It's like a chocolate milk, and having a bagel. It just brought me back some real nice memories, some touchstones in my life. And for me, that's what it was, a level of peace. But I'm even more peaceful now and so grateful that I am still here to talk to people about it, to guide people through it, and to sit. And while I might not know all the answers, I can also make sure that I'm not alone. And I now know I'm really not alone. You really don't think about those friends. Like we were talking about the 5 people you meet in heaven, those 5 friends who might show up to you today, who you might not think about it. And that was really important to me. My friend Dan, I go back to my friend Dan and we joke about it. I go, every now and then I go, hey, you're going to drive down, like I'll pay for dinner or I do something for him. And I go, you were going to drive down to Philadelphia for me. I go, 2 hours. You didn't even know where I was, but you were ready to be in the car. I go, man, that's love. And this is a guy I threw a bowling ball at, which is a completely different story. But, but it's really, you don't know who's going to show up in your life. And that's the magic of that hope. Don't hope that somebody's going to show up in your life. There will be somebody. I guarantee you, if you sat at a bus stop and you didn't know anybody, you'd eventually find somebody to talk to who would care about you and would not leave you in the darkness. You're on mute. It's a great question.
Oh, sometimes silence is one of the best questions.
100%.
Loved by who? And what would have been enough? Like you said, nobody could have saved me. Nothing that anybody said could have saved me. I was ready to go. But what if David did feel loved and had enough? What would that have looked like on that day?
I needed some support, obviously. I felt I was alone in the world and that the resources I had, and for me, part of my decision making was I had a child. I had just won A year or two before that, I'd won residential custody of my younger daughter, and I was like, if I'm screwing her up and I'm screwing up everybody else, and man, I'm out. I don't want to, as a parent, we don't want to screw up our kids. We all do it in some way or not. That's the real meaning of life. But you don't want to do that. You want to show up for your family. You want to do the things that you need to do. And for me, at that time, I just needed probably a hug. I needed somebody to say, it's going to be okay. I needed somebody to show up and show me how it was going to be okay. At the beginning, I didn't believe it. I'm not going to tell you that once I got myself reassociated, I knew it was going to go. I was still struggling when the pandemic started. It was better. I was off medication. I felt the pain, but I knew how to handle it and cope it. I put myself in therapy. I knew the right ways to go about it, but I still was going through it. I mean, in the middle of a pandemic, as I'm writing a book, I found out another level of the bottom falling out. At that time it was like 30 years before, was a girlfriend got killed, and I was holding on to some survivor guilt, and I still hold on to it a little bit, but you don't know what's in you until you get to decide and dive into you and learn so much more about yourself. So that's, also that hope, the hope that what happened to you, that there's a lesson out there, that somebody else is going to read something that is going to touch them in a way that's going to help them. That's why we write books. That's why I write books. That's why I go on stages. I have learned, if it's all about me and ego, man, Kid Ego died that day, and it's not going to lead me in the best way. But if I do it with the best of intentions, like writing those letters still might have hurt some people, because they might have been like, well, if he could say those things to me in a letter, why couldn't he have said that to me in person, and things like that. I don't know what would have happened if I gave out those letters. I don't know what would happen if I had the opportunity to have the conversations that I dream about. But I do know that I've had a lot of these deep conversations with myself. And that's why I know and have faith in myself and the confidence in myself that won't happen again. It's fact. People have asked me that one question, and I'm sure that's on your mind. You're coming up with great questions. But how am I not going to ever do that again? I have built my life to be honest. At the beginning, when I wasn't feeling good, I would tell you I'm not feeling good. And when I'm not feeling good, there's a lot of people. I have a ton of resources, people who I might not speak to regularly, that I can reach out to and say, hey, I need somebody. And if I say I need somebody, they know I need somebody.
Well, and I think you're 100% right. And I think once again, it's your tribe, it's the people around you, and I have to shout Lacey out. Here, watch. We'll see if she's still watching. Lacey, are you still watching? I'm about to say something nice for you about you, and you swear I never say anything good about you. So here it goes. But I will tell you that when I have like imposter syndrome, or I'm starting to think very negative about myself and my platform, or what I'm doing, or business, I'll go into a dark place where I'll start saying really negative stuff, and there'll
Yeah.
be a point where Lacey's like, "Listen, I can't listen to this anymore. You can do and say what you want to yourself. I'm not going to entertain it anymore. You already know that you're great. You already know that you're good. Just to have somebody reassure you, and whether it's your friend or your family or somebody you talk to, or those resources, that you don't talk to every day, it's just knowing that somebody sees something, and keeps that moving. And I think, you mentioned two things when you talked about the suicide, which was alone in the world and fearing of being a bad parent. Now, playing devil's advocate, don't you think by leaving your daughter's life, um, it's daughter, correct?
Your daughters, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, don't you think that in a way would be bad parenting because you're no longer there to support them and do the job of a parent? How does that look at through your eyes during that time?
Yeah, so one of the stories I was told is I was a bad parent. I'd heard that from their mom, as well as then, you know, the, the wife at that time, and So it was a lot of, you're hurting your kids. Don't you see you're hurting your kids? And, you don't even recognize that. And then when I talked to the kids afterwards, they were like, no, they didn't feel that way. And I've spoken to them since, it's been a while. But it's a story I allowed to believe. And sometimes you are better without a parent. I'm sure we also know lots of different stories or having a different relationship with that parent. Uh, and my suicide attempt, while my kids don't want to talk about it, they both will agree that I'm a different parent because of it. So it actually was one of the things that made me a better parent, made me better appreciative. Like there's times, that I walk over to my daughter, I go, I'm not asking for a response, but I think you need to hear I love you. And I just walk away because I know her and she doesn't want to hear it. Dad, I know, you're my dad. You have to say that. And I go, I don't have to say that. I
That's
want
true.
I want to remind our kids that I don't have to say I love you. I don't have to take it. They're both over 18. I don't have to do anything. Everything I do is a choice, including who I say I love to, and things like that. And love doesn't always
Yes.
mean romantically. Love means I'm going to show up
Yes.
100%. And so, was I a bad parent? Yes and no, but what would have happened if I didn't do it and I was bitter and angry and all those things, didn't get to see it? I don't know that I'd be the parent I was now. I don't know that I'd be the man I was now. We don't know. We would be definitely different, having a different experience. But because of that experience, I know I'm a better parent because of it. And I can't beat myself up over that. Maybe I would have been a bad parent by succeeding and the repercussions that might have had. Uh, but I really believed that the story I was being told, that I was doing more damage than good, and I wouldn't want to do damage to either one of my girls. For any of at that time there was 4 girls. So there was with anybody. I mean anybody who knows me, even on my worst days, I'm not looking to hurt somebody. I just want them to stop. Most of the arguments we have is, hey, I don't want you in my life. I don't like what you're doing, and stay away. We don't say it the right way. We don't act the right way. But man, it really is better conversations, better use of words, right? Addict or user. How does that feel for most of us? And some people take that pride. I mean, you and I talked about that, about, I'm an addict. And okay, I'm not here to tell you. I'm like, I would rather you see yourself as a user, somebody who used something wrong, rather than that's who you are, that label you have, that label of stupid, all the other things. Those are the really big things that we don't want to have happen, is to label ourselves with negative words.
Well, yeah, it's can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. You're good.
Yeah, because it's staining and it's toxic. And why should you subject yourself to any of that when one half of it, what you say, won't be true about yourself, and second, if the biggest thing that we're complaining of usually is, hold on, let me just, there we go, testing 1 2 3, all right, cool. Is the fact that 80% of what we think and how we're treating ourselves may not even be the reality of the world or the people that we think that, and I think a lot of times nobody gives a shit. And what I mean by that is most times when you're sitting here in turmoil, like, oh, this person doesn't like me or all this, most times they're probably not even thinking about you. They probably have no interaction with you. And if they really don't like you, that's one thing. But I've been in tons of rooms before where I was like, I met this person, we didn't really vibe well, maybe they don't like me, and they actually had great things to say about me. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things too where it's up to us to do our due diligence to seek out the truth. And if we feel a certain way, we go and we justify that by, you know, gaining that knowledge and then turning that constructively, and instead of becoming destructive, you know, cognitive behaviors, you know, like Charlie said. And I think it's a learned behavior to be able to do that, because it's like, there's a guy, a professor, this is on Instagram, and he puts the student up on the chair and he pulls the student down, and he can easily pull the student down, right? Because it's sitting on the chair.
Sure.
Well, they switch around and then they're like, okay, now pull the professor up. It's much harder to pull somebody else up. It's much harder to be positive. It's much harder to be appreciative, especially if you're struggling too. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think what we forget is the our problems are also the world's problems. And but because everything is the way it is and life's the way it is, it feels so microscoped on just us and isolated to the point that we do feel like we're alone, or the only people going through this, or, you know, there's nobody out there that can relate.
Yeah, it's how we carry it. You know, and it's one of those things. It is the story we tell ourselves, and how we believe those stories, and you know, but carrying it because it's an energy. You know, the energy, and you know, one of the things that when you were talking about, it takes no energy to be negative. Think about it. You know, it's easy to be negative. It's hard to smile, right? You know, when you're not wanting to smile, it's hard. You can't make you smile. I can, you know, make you smile by tickling you, but it's still a choice. It becomes a choice,
Yeah.
right? You could fight me on it and then not do that. You could do some silly things and not be there. So, you know, you want to be negative, man, it's the easiest thing in the world. Um, it doesn't take a lot of energy, but it takes a lot of energy to hold on to it. And that's what I would say to people is when you're angry at somebody, are you holding on to that? Just let it go. Let it go.
Yes.
Because that's an energy also. It's not just, you know, Steven, you got me angry, or Dave, you got me angry, and then it goes away. We're holding on to it. There's pieces in our body. If you think about it, I know for me, when I hold my stresses, it's in my shoulders. You know, how many of us have the weight of the world on our shoulders, right? That's where these sayings came from. It's knowing where the body releases it and how to release it. And that's why forgive people, but truly forgive people. Again, because of my faith, there's a ritual. If I'm really sorry that I did something to you, I'd say I'm sorry. And you don't have to accept it. Second time, I'm sorry. Making sure that you understand why I'm sorry. And you still don't have to accept it. And then you go to the third time. You still don't have to accept it. You never have to get accepted. But in my belief, is if I've gone 3 times wholeheartedly sorry and chose to change my behaviors, that's on you. That's not on me. I am free from my choices. I am free. That doesn't give me 3 chances. That doesn't give me anything. The things that have gone wrong have gone wrong. But if I've come with my heart, and only a heart between you and God, again, that's why it starts with yourself. If you go wholeheartedly, God, I'm sorry. That's again goes back to my faith. When you go to pray at the church, you know, if you go say all the right words, don't follow the right actions, God knows that. And the same thing is the reversed. Is if you know it in your heart, I'm sorry for what I did. I will change. I'll do my best to change my behaviors and why I do things. You do that, it goes back to yourself. You free yourself from those things.
David said, it's funny that it takes, I thought, okay, we need to look this up. He says that it takes the same amount of muscles.
And I don't know if
Does
it's
it take the same amount of muscles to smile and frown?
probably. Right? It's the same facial muscles.
It takes more muscles to frown than to smile. The exact number varies depending on how you define each expression, but both use a similar number of muscles. Smiling typically involves fewer muscles, and it's often So keep smiling.
There you
All
go.
right.
Yeah, see, I would expect it to be about the
Thank you.
same. It's the same face, but what I'd say to you, it's easier to be negative to say, because that's our defense mechanisms. You know, Dave did something wrong to you, Stephen. You might say, "All right, I'm not going to forgive Dave," and then you're building up a lot more energy on preventing those walls from breaking down, rather than saying, I'm going to forgive him, and that doesn't mean you have to then be my friend. It Stop breaking those walls. Stop using your energy in ways that are not suiting yourself. It really is all about you. At the end of the world, at the end of the day, for all of us,
At
it
the end of
is
the
about
world,
us.
too.
Yep.
At the end of the world, it'll just be you. Oh God, that means I'm gonna be by myself.
Yeah.
Hey Charlie, guess what? He's our Scoop smoke sponsor, and these are the devices that he makes, and it's a PVC type material that you use, and my bud's extra sticky, and I've been using this so I don't have to get my fingers sticky.
Nice.
Sometimes like people don't want to smell before they go into work or whatever. So since you're on here, I gotta shout out my Scoops, which I'm actually using right now. I'm gonna roll me another joint here. So listen, we got 10 minutes left in the podcast. This is where I turn it over to my guest and really just open it up to you. If we've missed any points of the conversation that you want to dive into, if there's anything specific you wanted to discuss, we'll wrap it up with kind of David's thoughts.
Yeah, I always have some thoughts. I just want everybody to write down what they're going through at that point, because then when you look about it, you can have it. Don't hold on. The moment is either good or bad. Don't even put it that way. It's either good or an opportunity to learn through it. I'm a big writer, and if you need help with writing, I'm able to. Let's see, what does Charlie say? Actual muscle count. Oh, according to ChatGPT, there we go. Um,
That's who I asked.
yeah,
They
yeah.
better be
Well,
consistent.
right. And I think you said that smiling actually uses more, and frowning, but that doesn't mean it's easier, right? You're using less muscles. That doesn't mean it's easier. It just
Well,
means you're using
whichever
less muscles.
way.
Yep.
But now I'm questioning ChatGPT because now we're giving two different stories here, bud. There's
Yeah.
only one real answer.
Well, and ChatGPT with we could go back into that, but it's what you want to believe. So even with that, you get to believe what you choose to believe. And I'm going to tell you, I know it might take me a little bit more energy in, and even Monsters Inc. I once had this conversation about, Monsters Inc. Right? The scare only has so many, watts, kilowatts, or whatever they called it in that cartoon, but the laugh has so much more power. Think about it when you yell, how that feels, and then think about when you laugh, how that feels. Or when you're just sitting around being chill. So I'd always want to tell that good story. I want to make you laugh, because that makes me feel better. We could spread laughter much quicker than spreading hate, and that's what the world needs right now.
Yeah, I definitely think so, especially with all the things that are going overseas and everything. And we got natural disasters and flooding. The flooding is crazy. I mean, that's in parts of Virginia, and that's like an hour from here,
Yeah, it's
and
only gonna get
DC.
worse.
It's
You know,
just like yeah, and the subway station. Like, that's a ride on Universal Studios, dog. What the fuck is
yeah.
going on?
Well, you know what it does is like anything else. When life comes at you really heavy, when it's 3 inches in an hour, no matter where you are, you're gonna feel it, and life is gonna throw at you. But so I'll give you an example. So I guess at this point, like 3 years ago, so 3 years after the suicide attempt, I lost my best friend unexpectedly. I then took care of
Hmm.
his mom. Uh, and then lost her. She was 82 and had Alzheimer's. And
I'm
then my
sorry
own
to hear
mom
that.
passed away at the end of the year. So I lost three major people in my life. Talk about body blows. But I was able to handle it so much better because I had worked on myself, because I knew I was doing my best. Not every day was the greatest in the world. And even when my mom, in my first book that I published later that year, I had a picture of my mom holding my hand or me holding her hand, depending on how you look at it. Because we have to remember that the first heartbeat we hear is our mom's, and for me, that was the moment. She was when I held her hand that day. I knew that was the last day I was going to see her. She passed away 2 months afterwards, but I knew she was in
So
Houston.
sorry.
Yeah, thank you. It was her birthday yesterday, so it's kind
Oh,
of
well, happy birthday to mom.
exactly, man. That's what I said. But what I learned about that is I was able to make peace with the whole situation. Thanks a lot, Charlie. I appreciate it. It is tough.
Charlie's a great guy.
All right, I got to get to know Charlie a little bit. And
Oh, please do. He's actually the owner of these, and he lives in Canada. That's one
nice.
of the cool things about the interweb. It gets us all connected.
Yeah, we're just a little phone call, video call away, and it makes the world much smaller, and we're more connected, which is really what I always say, even about all the things we talked about. It's all about connection, finding your people, finding your tribe, and you do belong in a tribe. No matter what anybody tells you, there's a tribe out there for you.
My wife says she's really sorry for your loss.
Thank you, Lacey. I appreciate it.
So, let's see here. Oh man, I really just forgot where I was. I got distracted here. Continue on.
Yeah, no. So I mean, that's really what it is. I mean, that's the wrap up. Is I'm an author. I do. I love writing. I love getting people's stories. So I also do some ghost writing. So
Oh, very cool.
if you think you can't get a book out, I'll guarantee you I can get you a book. And you know that's the great part about knowing that and what you want to do. I mean, Stephen, you're a speaker. You've gone to conferences. You've been a keynote speaker, and people need to hear your story. Need to hear about the knowledge that you have, that you bring to the table, that you earned by doing it because you love yourself. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, because even you could have just sat there. I mean, like you and I were joking about Cheech and Chong style, and they didn't care about anybody, and they could blow smoke. But you chose to do whatever you want to do, but you're teaching people, you're educating people, you're showing up for people, and that's what we need to do is show up a lot more. And no matter how you show up, as long as you're not hurting anybody, man, just love them. That's why
Well,
the podcast, peace, love, and bring a bat. The bat is not about beating somebody up. It's about knowing your boundaries and hitting your sweet spot, finding whatever that sweet spot is for you. And that's the magic of life.
well, and I just want to be clear too. I am very much the student in all this because I am not perfect and I don't have it all together by any means. But I also have I always say it's a selfish reason because, um, in a way, the podcast and showing up for other people and doing all this, I'm trying to fix the way I feel inside. And I've talked about this, and we can go into it another time, but a lot of my podcasts. And it's one of the things where this has actually become a therapy for me, which is just talking to other people, which
Mhm.
is creating a therapy for them. And that's why one cool thing about our Discord is Henry actually said the other day that being in my Discord is like a therapy session every time he comes in, and that's one thing that I'm specializing in is creating what's called safe space. And that's where there is no judgment, there's no bias, there's no narrative. It's just who you are. And if you're cool, you're cool. There's no narrative or prerequisite. It just come as you are, and it's an ability to that and a privilege I feel to be able to do this because in a way, this is me being constructive with how I feel inside instead of being destructive or, imitating the hate or the outlash. Like I had a falling out with somebody out earlier this year. Didn't even know they felt a certain way about me, and they felt necessary to make a public post. I just stayed silent. Why why promote negativity? You
Yep.
know, why even let that ruin my day? If somebody wants to leave my realm, you know, there's an exit sign on every building because you're allowed to leave. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things where you just get to a point where you're invested in you and you can sleep good at night. You know who you are, you know what you're about,
Definitely.
and that's good enough. You know, and I think that's the part of loving yourself where, you know what, maybe the world may have a misconception of you, but you know who you are. And the people that are close to you definitely know who you are.
Yeah,
So
people are going to tell stories. Again, that negativity. They're going to tell stories. They're going to gossip. They're going to do all those things. But it really is one of those things. Know who you are. Know what's in your heart. Between you and God, between you and yourself, that's all you need to do. Because at the end of the day, all those stories don't matter. It matters what you do and you treat, and people are going to see it either way.
yeah, I have it tattooed on my arm right here, and it says, "Every person you meet, every single one, is looking for their story. There are no exceptions. You become a part of it by how you treat them." It's
Yep.
literally tattooed right there.
Nice.
Yeah, I got that a long time ago. I got it on Facebook, but you know, I was like, I want to get that written on my arm. Like somebody grabbed my arm, and it's the last thing they like. Somebody's like, "Listen, like I need to leave this message with you. I don't know what's gonna happen to me." And then they wrote it on my arm to remind me that you know it's how we become part of. That's why the whole concept of who, not how. It's not how you're gonna do something. It's who you're gonna do it with. You know what I mean? That's the bigger thing. But unfortunately, we are out of time. I do need to have you on another podcast because this was wonderful.
All
I
right. Awesome.
really
Man. I love
enjoyed
it.
our 2 hours.
Yeah, I loved it. And, I love talking about mental wellness. And,
Yes.
it's a topic that's really hard to me. Like I said, Grandpa Mike told me I got to talk about it. I don't know what that is. That's why I write books, to make sure that people find resources. So whoever's listening to this, make sure you find a resource. You're not alone. You need somebody to talk to. Reach out to Uncle Dave, which is a completely different story. Why I'm Uncle Dave, but dude, I know for myself, my life changed because I did die that day a little bit, but life is so much better. And I am blessed. And I thank the Lord every day for the opportunity that I've been given to be resurrected and in people's lives who need to hear it.
Well, that is really awesome. Why don't you give yourself a plug real quick? Let everybody know how they can connect with such a wonderful person.
Well, you can listen to the podcast Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat on Apple and all the streaming services. Or the great thing about my last name, it's David Chametzky. And the real answer is there's not too many David Chametskys, but there's only one, davidchametzky.com. So check it out. If you like me, let's go just connect. You don't have to worry about it. You just need somebody to talk to. I'm that guy. Thanks a lot, Charlie.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely get, if you guys want to get connected, I'll put it in an email and get you guys connected. Yeah, I think you guys would definitely have a great conversation. Um, but guys, we have more podcasts coming your way. David, stay on real quick. I'm going to end this.
Thank
If
you.
you want to watch this podcast or more, go to YouTube. Make sure you like. I've been getting a lot of subscribers lately. And also, August 20th at Always Flavored in Fredericksburg, Virginia, I'm having my mental health panel. This is the second one. And I already have 2 guests signed up, and I'm looking for 3 more panelists. So if you're in the area and you're an entrepreneur, a creative, a parent, and somebody that has a story to tell, this would be a great stage for you. And we also, July 26th, have our veterans and cannabis mental health panel. And we already have 4 people. We are looking for 1 more person. It's a first come, first serve on the form. So whoever fills it out first, the form will cancel after the 5 people. So you'll know if it's available or not. But that is next Saturday and going to be very, very good. We got some great veterans coming on. And I can't wait for more. We'll be at National Cannabis Festival this Saturday, which I'm very excited about. And Yoda, believe it or not, is on his way from Connecticut to my house right now, driving in his car. Actually, don't feel bad for him. He has a Tesla, so it drives himself. But he said he does about 17 minutes of drive time, and I'm like, because if I drove to you, it'd be the full amount of drive time. But guys, it's been great, David. Awesome. We'll see you guys soon.
Thanks so much.